Hello everybody and welcome to the Nostalgia Peak, the series where I share with you the top list of episodes of whichever series I finished reacting to recently. As you can see by the title of this video, in today's episode we're gonna be sharing the top 21 episodes of Generator Rex. And right off the bat, I know some of you are gonna ask, isn't 21 episodes a little bit too many considering Generator X is a 3-season long show with 20 episodes per season on average? And in retrospect, I probably would agree with you. I probably should have went with somewhat smaller amount of episodes, but I've already made my bed, so I'm gonna lie in it. And also, I feel like based on the standards that I've set out for which episodes get to be on this list, this is literally the only list that I could have come up with. Because the basic requirements for which episodes end up on these lists are 1. How memorable an episode is. Do I actually remember it without having to look up any information about it, be it a thumbnail that I did for the video or reading up actually what happened in the episode because I've forgotten. If it fails in that regard, then it can't really be on this list. And the other requirement is, do I actually have something meaningful and important to say about this episode that I didn't mention or in my reaction review portion, or I didn't explain as in depth as I could have, you know? And based on those requirements, I have the ability to say that for all of these 21 episodes. And if that means that basically one season's worth of episodes of the show are actually really good, then so be it. Though I think the most important reason why this is the amount of episodes that I've gone with is because for me, a lot of these shows' best episodes are not really that far off in terms of their quality. It's like the number 21 spot is not really that far off from the number 1 spot. Like, they're basically in like 0.01 point from each other in terms of ratings for me. That's one way to visualize it for you guys. Like, they're not that far off from me. That is not because so many of these episodes are like amazing or whatever, but because a lot of these episodes are good, just not necessarily great. And that's kind of the general feeling that I have for Generator X. I enjoy the show, it was fun to watch it, but I never really felt quite as attached or emotionally invested as I did for other shows like Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 or TMNT 2012, or hell, even Transformers Armada, which is a show that I would say is probably worse than this one. I still felt more emotionally attached to that one than I did to Generator X. That's why I don't think I'm gonna have quite as many episodes in this that I would have a personal attachment to and a personal reason for why it's on this list. It's gonna be far more of an objective rating kind of thing with this one. So yeah, there's that. There's quite a few episodes to get through, so I think we should just start it off with number 21, Season 1, Episode 5, The Architect. Now, I don't have quite as much to say about this episode as some of the other ones, so I'm gonna kind of just go over it maybe a little bit quickly. But anyway, I do enjoy the concept of this episode quite a lot. It's an episode where, if I remember correctly, Rex is kind of fed up with Providence and all of the hard rules that they have for him, that he kind of wants a little bit of freedom. So he stumbles upon a town in the middle of nowhere that is like very green and sustainable and everything, that turns out is led by a supercomputer slash AI virus called Zagares. And Zagares does actually appear in a bunch more episodes after this one, but if I'm gonna be honest, I feel like this is probably the best version or the best episode with her as a villain, because yes, she does appear in some other episodes, some of which might even be on this list, who knows. But this is the one episode where I actually feel like her motives and her general villainness is compelling. Because in the other episodes, it's just her there, nanites bad, humanity bad, biological creatures bad. Whereas in this episode, it just kind of comes off a little bit more compelling and interesting because it's the origin episode, and I guess maybe potentially they explain it a little bit more, but there's just something about this episode that just makes Zaghares less annoying and more compelling for me, so I enjoyed that about it. It has some really nice visuals. I really enjoy the tone of this episode in particular. It reminds me of a certain fan made Doctor Who episode that I listened to because it was an audio episode, like an audio drama or whatever you want to call it. That I listened to in a period where Doctor Who was really bad and I wasn't really as much of a fan of it as I usually am. And a lot of the story of that episode is also very reminiscent of what happens in this episode with like a city in the middle of nowhere that is invisible, because I believe the city in this one is also invisible. So a lot of the tone and a lot of the concepts like that are kind of reminiscent. So that's another reason that I like this episode. But it is ultimately just the most interesting Zaghares episode, or at least the episode in which Zaghares is most compelling. And considering that she does appear in, I think, pretty much every season of this show, or actually not every season. I think it appears twice in season 1 and once in season 2. But anyway, since Zaghares is a villain that kind of appears a couple of times, I felt the need to put this episode on this list. And it is genuinely an entertaining episode. I think it's a greatly written sci-fi episode. It's something that I wouldn't mind watching in something like Doctor Who, you know? It feels like it would fit right in. It's something that I also probably would write myself whenever I get to sit down and write my Doctor Who-like story. Because for those of you who didn't know, I also write on Wattpad, or at least try to once in a blue moon. And I do have a plan to at some point write a Doctor Who-like story, similarly to how right now I'm in the middle of writing a Walking Dead-like story called Dead Inside. But yeah, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. This is a pretty fun episode, and I think it's a decent way to start off this list. Now, for number 20 though, we are gonna be getting into something a little bit more meaty. That being Season 2, Episode 12, Written in Sand. Now, this episode I love for a multitude of reasons. So much so that I don't even know where to start. I guess let's just get the elephant out of the room first. Zaghares does appear in this episode, similarly to the previous one. And I definitely do not enjoy her as much as a character or as a threat in this episode, quite as much as I do for the Architect. But I do like the effect that she has in this episode, physically. Because one of the threats of this episode posed by Zaghares is that she is literally slowly disintegrating Rex and Van Kleist to their basic building blocks of matter, or in particular to silicon, I think it was. Which is a really, really cool idea that I've seen, honestly, not that many times, but the times that I've seen it in media has always been very fascinating. Although I usually don't see it in the manner in which it's portrayed here, with them literally disintegrating into pieces of sand, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it. Usually it's kind of portrayed as little balls of light, which reminds me, again, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but if any of you guys know about a movie or a TV show or anything that could resemble this, please tell me, because there's this movie or a TV show that I remember watching as a kid that had the main characters disintegrate into balls of light if they got scratched or injured, and basically were dying in that process. But I haven't been able to find what the hell was that show or movie that I watched, and I've wanted to for decades at this point almost. Because it was so impactful to my childhood, but I haven't been able to find anything like that. And this concept of them disintegrating is kind of reminiscent to that, and I do enjoy that little bit about this episode. But there's the other aspect of this episode where throughout the episode we're kind of left to question what the hell is happening. Why are nanites gone from the area where Rex and Van Clyde are stuck? And why the hell are they hieroglyphs on the walls which look suspiciously like computer motherboards? At first, I actually thought that was a connection to the season 2 finale, which was one of the most memorable portions of Generator X that I've watched, that I still remember from when I watched it originally on TV. And I thought that this episode was gonna end up playing into that in some way, but that turned out to not be the case. Instead, it turned out to be Zaghares doing that. So that was another aspect for why I enjoyed this episode. But I guess the most important reason for why I enjoyed this episode is because it was an episode where Rex and Van Clyde were forced to team up to escape their situation. And it genuinely led to some pretty fun action set pieces in this episode, and some interesting interactions between the two as well, because they asked each other questions. We got some more information about Rex's parents and what caused the nanite event, with Van Clyde revealing to Rex that it was his brother who did it, and that he shouldn't trust him because he's not the man he seems to be. And I don't know if it's maybe Van Clyde has got into my head, but after this I feel like I genuinely wasn't really that trustful of Caesar ever again, and especially in season 3. In season 3, it's completely rightfully... I was completely rightfully not really a big fan of Caesar, but it ended up being good at the end. But yeah, that was very entertaining to see them going back and forth and everything. And then even at the end, Van Clyde being forced to reveal to Rex that he has the ability to make his own nanites thanks to the Omega nanite. That was pretty cool. Like, having your main good guy and main bad guy having to work together and basically boosts each other's powers like that is very, very fun, because he was forced to give that power to Rex, for which now he is gonna have to deal with later on. But yeah, that was pretty cool. Really fun back and forth episode between the two. It was great. I'm pretty sure it's even the episode that I put the thumbnail for the Generator X playlist, because it's just turned out to be such a good thumbnail. So yeah, it was a great episode. Now though, we gotta move up the list with number 19, Season 3, Episode 1, Back in Black. Now, I personally appreciate that even at the tail end of the Season 2 finale, we still got a little bit of information in regards to what happened there and what was going to be happening in Season 3, with some slight build-up there, with the introduction of Black Knight and everything. I feel like they easily could have tacked on that to this episode, because it does feel like this episode's pacing is a little bit stunted. Like, it does feel a little bit like in the first half of the episode where we are still kind of learning what has happened in the past 6 months after Rex time traveled. I feel like it is a little bit empty in terms of story and in terms of impact, so I feel like they could have done that better. But other than that, it's honestly a great introduction to the season for me. It's full-on plot, full-on character interactions, with Rex actually being smart for once. Well, it takes him a little bit, but he is suspicious right off the bat, and I do enjoy that about this episode quite a lot. Plus, it's just in general a really, really good setup for the season, with setting up what the stakes are, setting up what the feud between the good guys and the bad guys is, and where everybody stands and where everybody works from. It's all really, really good. The things that kind of drag it down are mainly things that have nothing to do with this episode, like the fact that Six lost his memories a couple of episodes ago makes it kind of weird having 6 months be skipped without Six growing as a character and as a person together with Rex, and yet he still basically acts completely the same, so that's a little bit weird, but I do really love all the new character in relations that we have from this episode onwards with Rex, Six, Holiday, and White Knight having left Providence and working on their own. I remember even when I watched the show originally on Cartoon Network back in like 2013, 14, I really like the new setup of them kind of working in the shadows a little bit more and being in more of like a legally gray area. Not morally, but at least legally gray area. It just kind of was more interesting compared to the out in the open approach of that they had with with the Providence organization. It was just a little bit more interesting, you know. It kind of reminds me of something like Torchwood or Men in Black a little bit, so I kind of dig that quite a lot. But yeah, I think Black Knight also gets a pretty good introduction as a villain, to where she's not outright villainous towards Rex. She does try to make him join her in a reasonable manner, tries to kind of recruit him properly to her side, but he still refuses. The one thing that I get the most emotional about in this episode is just the behavior for Caesar, which I still don't understand. Why is he so adamant to support Black Knight? Even having seen the rest of the season and having seen the whole series at this point, I still don't get why he was so adamant to control the evils against their free will. Like, even if they're monsters, it's not fair to control them against their will. Control their powers and subdue them somewhat, sure, but control them against their will? Fuck no. And I hate that the series never punishes Caesar for this kind of behavior, because he's even ready to do that to Rex in this episode. And the series never says that that is bad or punishes him for this kind of behavior. It kind of ends up amounting to this big plan to give Rex the ultimate power, but you could have done that without fucking taking away the free will of all evils, you piece of shit. So that made me really, really angry, and I think that's probably the most exciting thing about this episode for me, and the reason why I enjoyed it so much when I did. And talking about getting mad, we now need to get into episode 18. That being season 3, episode 11, Assault on Abysus. God, this episode makes me so mad. For a good reason, obviously, because it means that I really enjoyed it, that I really cared, but God, did this episode make me so mad and so hateful towards the Black Knight, because not only did she go after Rex's friends in the beginning of the episode and try to capture Cersei and take away their free will once again, that being one way that she wanted to go after Rex because of what happened in the previous episode, where he managed to steal away from her the one weapon that she had against him, a guy who could negate Rex's powers, basically. But then she goes on full assault on Abysus, the place where the original Nanite event happened, where Rex lost his memory for the first time, and where it's Van Kleist's home base. And with Van Kleist having gotten rid of at the end of the last season, Obviously now we have Beowulf as the second in command. So in this episode, it's really cool how Rex and Beowulf kind of end up working together. And in many ways, Beowulf becomes kind of good in this episode, because in the final moments of the episode he sacrifices himself so Rex can escape with the Omega Nanite, which is far more important than any of the Evos there. But so that was really cool, especially because we've already had some breadcrumbs in terms of that character relationship between Beowulf and Rex in one of the previous episodes where well, not of that season, but in one previous episode where Van Kleist went to Kiev in Ukraine to recruit the no-face guy to his team, and Beowulf felt like he was potentially getting replaced from second in command, and Rex played on that there, and they also kind of ended up working together there as well. So this is a great growth of their relationship there. But I also really love how Rex basically becomes the king of all Evos in this episode, because he helps Beowulf and all the other Evos over there fight Providence to protect Abysus. Like, that's some really good shit. I really, really enjoy that. But yeah, we get some emotional moments with Rex seeing the original laboratory where the nanite event happened, and seeing a picture of him with his dad, which is very heartbreaking. I never really felt like the show managed to actually impact me in that regard quite as much as it probably should have. Mainly it's because that kind of story beat reminds me a lot of CW's The Flash, and the way they have his relationship with his mom and dad, with his mom dead and his father dying later on as well. With that show doing such a good job with that parent death thing, I feel like Generator X never really managed to hit as hard in that regard. Not because it couldn't, but it just kind of didn't. Like, we never really learned much about his parents for me to feel an impact, you know? But it was still somewhat an emotional moment there that I really, really enjoyed. And once again, at the end of the episode, I was just super mad at Black Knight for taking away Cersei, capturing her because she sacrificed herself so Rex could escape. And I was just so mad that she took her free will away from her, because that shit just pisses me off so much. I hate authoritarianism so much. I hate anybody who tries to take away people's human rights, people's freedoms to be whoever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody. Because, like, who the fuck does Black Knight think she is to take away their powers, their free will, just for world conquest and power? Like, who the fuck do you think you are? And the most infuriating part is, again, the fact that Caesar is the one who developed those things, I believe. Or at least that he doesn't mind doing that to the Evos, taking away their free will. Like, I hate that shit. It just makes me so mad. And especially doing that to Cersei, that was personal. And that's why this episode is so damn good. It really made me rage in a way that I never raged before this episode. So, well, I guess I felt angry a little bit in the previous one, but I definitely raged in this episode quite a lot. So, yeah, I don't feel like it managed to quite ever deliver on that rage, but feeling that rage in that episode at least means that that episode is pretty good. So, let's continue with number 17, that being Season 2, Episode 9, Haunted. And I gotta say, this is the reason why I love this episode. So, let's continue with number 17, that being Season 2, Episode 9, Haunted. The main reason why I love this episode is because it really reminds me of probably my favorite episode of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which is a series that I wouldn't mind reacting to at some point in the future, but you guys gotta keep in mind that I have seen the series. I remember quite a lot of it, pretty much the most important bits for sure, so I don't know how much of a good reaction I can do of it, but I remember watching it and I remember really enjoying a certain particular episodes about an haunted house which ends up being eaten by the earth itself or something along those lines. And this episode reminds me in many ways to that. That is not the only reason why I enjoy this episode, mind you. The episode has a lot of merits on its own as well. It's just very much feels like a Scooby-Doo episode thrown in Generator Rex. And with pretty much my favorite cast of characters, so there's that as well. But yeah, I love how much of a Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated episode it feels like, down to what the characters assume the villain is, looking very much like that one character from Mystery Incorporated from that one episode. So that was really cool, but I also just enjoy the inclusion of Claire and Annie in this episode, who are a surprisingly entertaining couple of gals, you know? Like, I really feel like Annie is the best love interest for Rex. I'm not quite sure with what girl Rex kind of ends up with, because the end of the series is a little bit rushed and unclear in that regard. It's kind of set out to be like Cersei, but as much as I like Cersei, I feel like Annie is far more interesting of a love interest for Rex. Like, I feel like she has far more personality than Cersei. Cersei is a cool character, but she's in many ways just a female Rex, whereas Annie is her own character, completely different from Rex. And I really like her gimmick with luck. Like, it's really charming and makes her a really entertaining and fun character who kind of has a superpower but doesn't really. It's really, really cool. I'm pretty sure every single episode in which Claire and Annie have been in, which I believe is like 3, has been really, really good. And this is probably my personal favorite because I feel like everybody is at their A game in this one. It's really fun. Plus, again, the concept of the Scooby-Doo kind of thing with this episode, potentially being about a haunted house and everything. It's just really, really interesting to me as a big fan of horror, so I really enjoyed that about the episode as well. Obviously, it turns out that it's not a haunted house, it's just an Evo, but it was still a really cool episode with a lot of really fun moments, with fun concepts, and very entertaining tone. I did enjoy this episode quite a lot. But yeah, now we gotta continue with number 16. That being Season 2, Episode 7, Mixed Signals. So, this episode on its own doesn't quite have like many impactful moments or a cool concept. Well, it kind of does a little bit, but it's a minor part of this episode, but it is an entertaining episode nonetheless. Mainly because it's the episode which introduces Rex's brother, Cesar, who, despite my misgivings about his personal morals and stuff, especially in Season 3, he is a really fun and entertaining and memorable character. I remember liking him quite a lot, even when I was a kid. Although I think when I was a kid, when I watched the show originally, I thought he was like a future version of Rex or something, because he looks so much like Rex. Like, my brain at first was like, wait, Rex? When did you grow up so much, you know? But I do like his introduction in this episode, how mysterious it is, how lost he seems to be. And I like how they explained it, that he basically was time traveling in a realistic manner, because due to the nanite explosion, he ended up traveling, I think, far above the speed of light or something along those lines, which caused 15 minutes to be perceived by the rest of the world as 5 years. Like, he was time traveling in his time spatial relativity for 15 minutes he was experiencing stuff, but in that time, 5 years actually passed for the world. So that's the really cool sci-fi concept that I really, really enjoyed. I'm a big fan of time travel and sci-fi, but especially time travel. So that just tickles me right in the correct spot. But it is just a really fun episode where we learn more about Rex and his family and his backstory and everything. I really hate that we don't have like one episode throughout the series which actually just explains everything about Rex and gives us a full and complete breakdown of his life prior to losing his memory. I feel like we really needed that and we never really got that closure. But this was still a fun episode in that regard. Also giving us a little bit of a setup, I guess, or a little bit of a backstory about what even caused the nanite event in the first place. That being a split between the scientists working on the nanites in regards to how they should be used. One side wanted to use them for good, to help humanity, and the other wanted to use them for power, as is typically the case. So that was pretty interesting, and obviously kind of sets up what ends up happening in season 3 in many ways. But yeah, there's not necessarily much more to that in this episode. It's just a lot of setup and build up and explanation that is really, really satisfying to hear about after watching this show for, well, 28 episodes at the point of at which this episode is. So it was pretty fun. Not necessarily much more than that, but I definitely enjoyed it quite a lot. Now though, let's move to number 15, that being season 1, episode 15, What Lies Beneath. So this was probably the first really, really cool Van Cleise episode that we got in the show, which felt like it was moving the plot forward, and it felt like it was our characters dealing with the villain for once. But in retrospect, it kind of really doesn't make much sense, the events of this episode. First of all, due to the events of prior episodes where Van Cleise got defeated and got technically killed for all intents and purposes, his home base of Abysus was falling apart without him being there, which makes no sense considering that he gets rid of in the season 2 finale, and yet in season 3 Abysus is just fine with nothing destroying it, like how it happens in this episode. Like, I don't understand why all of a sudden later on it's not an issue. And obviously Rex and co are forced to bring him back so he can actually restore the balance at Abysus and take control of it. And for some reason he gets brought back as a giant. I don't understand what that was about. But the most important aspect of this episode is the fact that at the end of it, Rex manages to cure Van Cleise, because he was incurable. He used to be incurable before, so that's kind of shocking, but it makes sense with the way they explain it, because with the way they restored him with new nanites who weren't broken, who were able to be cured, you know? And the frustrating thing about that is, it doesn't fucking go anywhere. It just doesn't go anywhere. Because I'm pretty sure the next time we see Van Cleise, he's back to having his powers. He's back to being a villain. So what the fuck was the point of that? That's honestly what's so frustrating about this particular episode. What was the point of that crap? Because it's a cool concept. I liked him cured. It made him human, and it actually kind of humanized him a lot, and it was kind of wild to see, but again, it just didn't really amount to anything, so it's a wasted potential, I feel like, there. And I'm not gonna lie, in this episode it was also a little bit frustrating seeing Cersei continue down her abused path of wanting Van Cleise to be back for some stupid reason. Like, I never really understood why she thought like that. Like, I understand that people feel Stockholm syndrome, and people who are abused feel like that and taken advantage of feel like that, but that doesn't make it not annoying to watch on TV. So yeah, that was also pretty frustrating. But I just love how it's set up in this episode, how Rex is forced to bring back Van Class despite not wanting to, and that despite him bringing him back, he still manages to kind of ruin him by curing him, you know? It's kind of wild how many times Van Clyde just keeps fucking coming back. He's like the reverse Flash in that regard. And that is even more funny considering the new power that he's gonna come back with after this episode, you know? Because later on he manages to have basically the opposite power of Rex. Instead of curing evos, he creates evos. I don't even remember how he gets that power, but he gets it. So, there's that. But yeah, pretty fun episode with some frustrations and some wasted opportunity, but I still enjoyed it. Now, at number 14 though, we're gonna have another episode that actually made me very, very, very angry. Although not quite as angry as I was when Black Knight attacked Abysus in Season 3, but still very frustrating. It was basically a sequel episode to a previous episode where Noah and Rex were going through the Providence soldier course to see how well they would do. For a filler episode, it was honestly pretty entertaining. I did enjoy that one quite a lot. And it introduced this character whose name I can't remember, but she was actually a really fun character in this one. I really enjoyed the way her relationship developed with Rex, because in the previous episode she was mad at Rex for not doing things by the book and being very unfocused and being very like not being a proper soldier. But in this episode they are forced to work together by White Knight, and she actually develops in that regard and realizes that the way you're taught by the book is not necessarily the way you're gonna do stuff afterwards in the field. And there's a balance that needs to be struck between the two. And that's what allows them to defeat the villain of this episode, which is basically a racist white bitch. The queen of the clan Karenhood, if you will. So that was really angry, but that honestly kind of made her a compelling villain, I guess. Because, like, I don't support her or anything, but I was entertained. I enjoyed hating her for her shitty racist beliefs, because she said that evils and humans are not meant to mix. Like, people like that need to fucking go and throw themselves into the fucking sun or some shit. I hate them. They don't deserve to breathe air on this planet. But yeah, that was a pretty fun episode with some decent action, some really funny moments that I really, really enjoyed. We saw Squid again as well. But the compelling villain there is what was really entertaining, especially because she was working with an Evo to achieve the goal of making humans and Evos not want to work together. Isn't it ironic? And the interesting thing is that the Evo that Rex was meant to deal with in this episode, similarly to Zaghares, every time he tried to touch it, he would lose his nanites. As far as I know, that Evo had nothing to do with Zaghares, but it's kind of interesting that he had another Evo or another enemy like that to deal with. That also made it so he had to work with that agent to achieve to defeat the evil and achieve their goal of defeating them and everything. So that was pretty cool. It's a creative way of having Rex need help, you know? But yeah, this was honestly a pretty fun episode. I did enjoy it quite a lot. So now let's continue with number 13. That being Season 2, Episode 6, coincidentally named Divide by 6. This is the episode which gives us a little bit more of a backstory in regards to Six's backstory, who he was before the nanite event, what he was doing and everything, and introduces us to a bunch of honestly really, really cool characters that I wish were used more and that we kind of got to learn more about in general, because they were so memorable and so cool. That being all of the other mercenaries who also have similar names to Six based on numbers. Those being 3, 4, 5, and 2. And for pretty much all of them, I'm pretty sure they are based on like a different language, because there's IV, who is supposed to be 4. There's DOS, who is 2. There's 5. I believe she was like a British girl. I think she was just called 5. I don't remember quite. But that's another really cool way to kind of add even more memorability to their characters with them having these really cool names. And it was really cool to see Six and his interactions with these characters, because it shows you a little bit more of what he used to be before joining Providence and everything. So that was really cool. And it also shows you how much he has clearly grown from back then, because this is also after we saw a little bit of a glimpse of Six from early Providence time back at the end of season 1. And it's really cool to see how defensive and protective he was of Rex in this episode. Kind of standing up from him, and how strong and how badass he is. Even compared to these most dangerous people in the world and everything. And this whole episode, I love how it was all about the number 1 most dangerous person in the world, and I love how they kind of still kept it mysterious, and we never really have learned how that most dangerous person looked like before going evil, because the whole point of the episode is curing him from that. And I also kind of love that they actually didn't cure him. It makes this episode very bittersweet and emotional. And if you've been with my channel for any amount of time, you know at this point that I love bittersweet shit. It's so good. That's the thing that makes me the most, makes me cry the most, and makes me it most satisfying to cry. Because if it's just happy, I don't cry. If it's just sad, I might cry. But if it is kind of bittersweet, it just tastes so well. I love it. I love that contrast makes it hit that much harder. So I love how at the end of the episode, he ends up essentially... I mean, I don't know how to describe it. He gives his own life so an island can flourish in a way. Because he would rather do that than lose his mind and become a mindless evil. Which is pretty cool, because Rex... is unable to cure him, obviously. Funny thing is, if he survived until the end of the series, he would have been cured anyway, and I wonder what happened to that island after the series finale, because I wonder how that nanite clearing event affected that, because I'm still sure exactly how one did what he did with the island. I don't know, but anyway. This episode also had some really, really, really fun action. Some of the best one in the series, if I gotta be honest, and I really, really enjoyed the way it was choreographed. Like, this was genuinely like a really good episode. It easily could have ended up being in my top 10 list, but the reason why it's not there is because everything from this point onward is really fucking cool and interesting and awesome. But yeah, I really, really like what this episode is. And in many ways, this is probably the best Six Focused episode, but anyway. The one thing that I can say was really annoying about this episode is the constant bickering between all of the other most dangerous people in the world, because they were constantly whining that Six left them and stopped being a mercenary, and whined that there was nothing they could do to fix one, and that it was pointless to take Rex to him. it was just frustrating because it didn't make any sense to me why they would act like that. Like, sure, maybe it is pointless, but how the fuck would you know if you don't try? It was just frustrating because they could have easily at least taken breaks for him to try that and see if it's gonna work. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But not trying is it's just infuriating. And then they went out of their way to even fight Six and Rex because of that, because they were actually willing to help one and not kill him. Like, those people are just way too addicted to killing. And I really wish the series gave us more of them and kind of developed their characters in that regard. They're one of these type of characters that I really, really enjoy, which kind of add to the world building of a series, because they really remind me of something I feel like you easily could have seen in something like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003 series, where you have a lot of these kind of characters who have nothing to do with the main story. They kind of have their own side stories even that kind of add to the world, and I really love that about the 2003 series. So having more of a fleshed out development with these characters over a bunch of episodes, just like with some other concepts that we've had featured in a bunch of different episodes, could have been really cool, but we didn't really get that, did we? Sure, we saw them appear again, but never quite as prominently as in this episode, and it didn't really amount to much, so I don't know, I don't think that really quite worked, but I really liked it. I really liked it nonetheless, and I really loved the heart-to-heart between Six and One at the end of the episode. That was really cool and emotional, saying how proud One is of Six, which makes it that much more weird why the other mercenaries act the way that they do. Because if One was this calm, kind of, I don't know what to call it, like a master trainer or whatever, why would those people be so psychotic and so willing to kill him? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me why they would be like that, you know? But it was really cool to have that heart-to-heart between the two, and we got the really cool moment of Six removing his glasses, which was really fucking cool. And the funny thing for me is that is not even the only character whose removing of the glasses is a really cool character moment for me, because there is another character in a completely different franchise who also wears glasses all the time, and the moment where he does remove them is really, really fucking badass. That being the character of Kido Yuto from Inazuma 11, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, I am reacting to. I've watched it many times, but I'm reacting to it and covering it on the channel, and it's honestly been pretty fun. You'd be surprised how much you enjoy those reactions, despite the fact that I've seen it many times. So it's not like you're seeing my first reactions to it, but it's still really, really fun. But yeah, he also has a moment where he removes his glasses later on in the series, and it's really fucking badass. And I really enjoyed this moment. That's the moment that makes this episode for me. Like, sure, I like the characters and I like the story of this episode in general, but that moment just makes it like a 10 out of 10 for me. It's a really good episode. But yeah, next we have another really, really fun episode with another bunch of really, really cool characters. That being Season 1, Episode 12, Rabble. Now, the biggest reason why I love this episode is because, I mean, in many ways, it reminds me of Ben 10 Alien Force, which is probably my favorite Ben 10 series, and I can't wait to get to it in my reactions, because I'm currently reacting to the original series, and I'm still very early on. But in many ways, the characters of Squid, Cricket, and I always forget his name, but I know who voices that character, that being Dante Basco. He plays this guy who can basically move around like a mummy, like he can remove his white cloth and just move around like that, which is really, really cool. But that doesn't really make any fucking physical sense, because how would that be caused by an evil? But whatever, I'm thinking a little bit too hard about it. But the concept of these characters reminds me a lot of certain characters that we get in the Ben 10 Alien Force series, like a bunch of super-powered half alien, half human teenager. There's a bunch of characters like that, and these guys fit right in both character design wise, personality wise, what they do for the main character wise. And it makes sense because these are made by the same. Well, I don't know if those characters were created by Man of Action because I don't know how big a Man of Action's involvement is in the later on series, because I know they were involved in the original series, but I'm not sure about the Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, and Omniverse and everything. But it makes sense why there would be similarity like that because Man of Action has made both shows. But I love how much they remind me of Ben 10 Alien Force, those Ben 10 Alien Force characters. And even outside of that, I think they are actually really cool characters with great personalities that make sense that they would be Rex's friends. And they also kind of add more to Rex's backstory, with them being characters that know Rex from before we knew him, before he appeared on the show, before the show started, basically. That is pretty cool. And I would have liked an episode doing like a flashback showing us Rex back then. I think that could have been a cool one-off episode that this show could have done, especially because this show has an obscene amount of filler episodes that I don't really give two shits about, that I easily would replace with an episode like that. Because I feel like, as cool as it is to learn some of the backstory that Rex has with them and everything, I feel like we never really quite get the satisfied, complete version of Rex's backstory and Rex's life. And that is not even just a criticism for this episode, but for the show in general. I feel like we, sure, get some breadcrumbs and everything, but I never feel quite completely satisfied with how much of Rex's life we're actually aware of. It still feels incomplete, even after having finished the series, and I feel like that's not how it should feel. Once I'm done with the series, I should feel satisfied and like I know everything about Rex's character and backstory and the way his life has went. And I don't feel that. Even with the breadcrumbs that we learn here, where he was kind of a little bit of a douchebag when he was like an early teen, because he ended up selling out his friends to the bad guy of this episode, Quarry, who was also a pretty entertaining bad guy. But he ended up selling out his friends to him as a way to escape Hong Kong, which is where he was stuck for some reason. And I love that there was a bad side to his character, but because of the way Rex's amnesia works, or any amnesia works, can you even say that he is the same person as he was back then? Because, like, I guess the argument there is how much of a person's personality is nature versus nurture. And I guess I'm kind of the opinion that our personality is more... There's some innate nature stuff, but by and large it's more of a nurture kind of thing. Because it's like, I feel like no matter what, I would be some version of myself where I'm a very critical and open-minded person, but to what level I would be depends on my nurturing, you know? So in this case, Rex was probably not that different in his personality from back then, but the environment that he is in probably shaped him into a better person now. So yeah, I don't know. But what I was trying to say is that I feel like you can't even blame him for that, because due to him losing his memories, that old Rex might as well be dead for all intents and purposes, because he doesn't remember any of that. So how could you blame him? You know, he doesn't know what kind of headspace he was in, so he cannot properly defend his actions back then, or explain his actions back then. So yeah, I don't know. But it is a pretty cool episode. I love Dante Basco playing the role of Tuck, I think his name is, just came to me. And I feel like after this episode, for some reason, Dante Basco doesn't play him ever again. Maybe in the final season, but I'm not quite sure. And it's really annoying, because the same thing happens to Hunter Kane, and that kind of ruins the character for me. And I just want to say this. If you're a celebrity voice actor, if you're gonna play a character in a cartoon, fucking commit to it until the cartoon is over. Don't come in season 1 and then go fuck yourself for season 2 and season 3. Because it's fucking annoying. Because part of the reason why people enjoy characters is the people who play them. And when you change that, you kind of change fundamentally the character's personality, and it's just not the same. So yeah, it's very hard for one's character to be quite as entertaining, especially if you were already like entertained by the character beforehand, because there are cases, even in shows that I've reacted to, where a change in voice actor has ended up being for the better, like for example TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2012 series. Leo's voice actor got replaced halfway through the series, and the second voice actor, or third technically, was far better. And I actually started enjoying Leo as a character at that point. Before that, I was kind of at best. So it can work, but by and large, if you commit to a character, if you play a character, commit to it until the character is being used, you know? But yeah, still a pretty fun episode. I'm gonna say I don't think Quarry is quite as compelling villain as I think he should be or could have been, but I still think he's a decent villain, and for what the episode is, I think it was fine. But yeah, it's another enjoyable episode. So next we're gonna have at number 11, season 3, episode 6, Riddle of the Sphinx. So for me, this episode is what I thought Written in Sand was going to be like. Because when I watched this show originally on Cartoon Network, I remember watching the season 2 finale. And I thought that maybe in that Written in Sand episode, they were kind of setting up what was going to happen in that episode. Maybe there was even a latent memory in my head when I was watching the show for the reaction that I remember that Van Cleist does actually come back in an episode, like through time travel and stuff. He gets to come back to the present. But I thought that in that Written in Sand episode, those motherboard schematics that were on the sand walls in that episode were actually going to be turning out to be like ancient technology that was left there by Van Cleist, who was stuck in the past. But no, that's what this episode was. And God, did I love this episode, man. Because I just love the concept of ancient technology that was lost to time. Like, that in general is like a really fascinating and interesting concept. And I'm surprised that there really isn't, at least I am not quite as aware of any show or a movie that really employs that concept of like ancient technology that was lost to time, that easily could have been something that existed IRL, but it happened such a long time ago that there's no traces of it left for us to find. Like, I think there's like there was a TV show or something at some point that was doing that kind of concept, but to me it's just very fascinating. And then combine that with Egypt and mummies, and you have a really, really tasty mishmash of some really good stuff. And I also think I watched this episode very close to when I recorded my reaction to the Curse of King Tutankhamun's Tomb movie, which I've done a 3-part reaction to. You should check it out because it's actually really fun. But I think I watched this episode around that time, so those vibes were very much in my head when I watched it. So I really had a lot of fun with this episode. Like, the soundtrack was also really interesting. The atmosphere was really fun and memorable. And again, because I wasn't quite sure whether Van Cleist was done with or not. Like, I didn't know whether he was going to show up again or not. I was hoping that he would. And maybe, like I said, I had a memory in the back of my head that he will actually show up. I was waiting for this episode to kind of tell me that Van Clyce is the one who did all of this. Van Clyce is this mummy's father or whatever. And it fucking delivered at the end of it, which was really, really fucking cool. And I just had so much fun with this episode. Plus, even outside of the Van Clyce stuff, just having this mummy guy as a villain was just really, really fun. He was a compelling and interesting villain with a cool design and just cool demeanor in general. And honestly, it's kind of a wild how by the end of the episode it kind of made me care for him because mainly because of his pet, because as the episode was ending, due to how much time had passed since his creation, because he was kind of like frozen in time, or not so exactly frozen in time, but due to how much time had passed since his creation by Van Clyce, him and his pet's nanites were basically dying of old age. So his pet ended up falling off a tower and dying, and he was consoling his pet. And that honestly hit me as a pet lover. I myself have lost several cats over the years, and right now I have like 10 or so running around a farm. So I'm a big pet lover. It hit me right in the feels, and I really, really enjoyed it. I wish we got to see more of him. I would have minded to get a two-parter episode with this guy, but I guess maybe there wouldn't necessarily have been enough content to spread it over 2 episodes. And considering the existence of a certain other episode, this was basically a two-parter, just split across a bunch of episodes. Plus, I think there's also the fact that this was supposed to be like some of the episodes in season 3 are a little bit out of order, so this genuinely might have been technically a part 2 if it happened before season 3 episode 12, I think it was, which is the episode where Van Clyce actually comes back to the present, which was a really fun episode. But yeah, really cool episode, really cool concept, really cool character, really cool villain, really cool backstory. I love everything about this episode. The characters are on point, the visuals are amazing, the soundtrack is amazing. Easily could have been even in the top 5, but there's some really cool episodes that I feel like left more of an impact for me than this one even, so we gotta continue with those, I guess. But yeah, now we are finally gonna be getting into the top 10 episodes. Starting off with the season 3 two-parter, episode 19 and 20, the series finale, Endgame. Kind of not really imaginative of a name for this two-parter, not gonna lie. But despite the fact that this two-parter feels very rushed, and I feel like they essentially also have to make such an exposition drop in the beginning of the first part, I think it was honestly some of the best episodes of this series, like the best action. Like I really actually enjoyed the fast pacing of these episodes, how it was constantly throwing stuff and referencing stuff and everything. I think it was actually quite entertaining, and there was so much stuff that I cannot even talk about everything that happened and say why I loved it so much. I kind of just have to go broad strokes about it. And I guess, first off, let's just say the one thing that bothers me about this two-parter. Because there's at least 2 things that off the top of my head that I can think of, maybe 3. So first of all, I really hate that in this episode, when Rex ends up transforming into the giant monster, which by the way, fucking really reminds me of Symbionic Titan, which is a series that I really want to rewatch and react to on the channel, because I haven't watched it since it originally aired, and I remember really loving it. It really bothers me that after Rex transforms into that giant robot, which has been established to potentially delete his memory and cause him to have amnesia again if it happens, he not only doesn't lose his memories, but he doesn't get the ones that he lost. I don't understand why they didn't give him that. Because that's one of those things that makes it feel incomplete. That makes the show feel incomplete. That makes it feel like we never really got the satisfaction of learning about Rex's parents and Rex's backstory and all of that. And it's especially frustrating because as he is being beaten down while he's in this robot form, we are being shown footage of Rex with his parents. Like from when he was a child, memories that he had supposedly lost. So it makes it feel like they're implying that he's getting those memories back. And I feel like it would have been really, really cool for him to get those memories back. So it would make like his parents' sacrifice not necessarily be in vain, like, and would leave him with something to remember them. You know, it's like I'm pretty sure I mentioned it earlier, but like the way, for example, the Flash, CW's The Flash, has done this kind of, oh, I lost my parents and I have a hard time dealing with that. I don't have a family really anymore kind of thing. I think they actually did a good job to where you actually get the satisfaction that their character requires to be at peace with losing his parents. I don't feel like Rex ever gets that. And it's really annoying. And I feel like one way how it could have actually worked out is if they actually got him his memories back there. But again, if I start talking about the memory shit, I also gotta complain about Six losing his memories and that not really amounting to anything. Man, now that I think about it, this series is really a prime example of a fucking wasted opportunity. Because there's quite a few things that are cool ideas that are either too rushed or don't go anywhere. Like, for example, Van Cly's being cured from his evil powers. It's just that at the end of that episode, and it doesn't really go anywhere. Well, it goes somewhere, but that has nothing to do with him becoming human, really. So that kind of went nowhere. And with Six's memory loss shit, it's like after that episode, it's basically only mildly referenced like a couple of times, but it doesn't really fundamentally change Six's character in any way. And especially it's really annoying with the time jump that we get in season 3, because then the amount of time that he has had with Rex to kind of rebuild his character from before losing his memory is kind of cut short, because in the next 6 months he is not with Rex. So how the fuck does he still manage to be the Six that he was before losing his memory, despite not having Rex, and having Rex being the reason why he decided to try to be the man that he used to be before losing his memories? Does that make any sense? Did you get it, guys? Because I don't think I did a good job explaining it, but anyway, that was really frustrating, and I really wish they did that with Rex's characters and gave him his memories back. Especially when he got all the Omega Nanites, not the Omega Nanites, the Meta Nanites into him, which basically turned him into a god. Why couldn't he recover his memories then? I also would have liked for him to turn into the orange monster again and not just the blue one. Which I think the reason why he didn't lose his memories is probably because the blue one is more stable form compared to the orange one. Who knows? But there's that as well. Another thing that bothers me about this two-parter is the villains of this series, the Consortium, where we're obviously told that these are just rich guys who wanted to live forever. And then when they got the Meta-Nanites and basically became gods for all intents and purposes, they became these mechanical beings, which on some level I kinda like, and I'm kind of okay with at the very least, and I like the irony of them wanting to be gods and have control over reality, but being stuck as these monsters, basically. Like, it's just very satisfying like that, you know? To have your villains get what they wanted, but not in the way they wanted it, you know? So that's kind of interesting, but that kind of... If they knew that there was a possibility of that, or if they kind of accepted it afterwards, then what was the point of living forever? Because, like, I wouldn't mind living long or forever or whatever. I don't want to die. But the reason why I want to live is because I want to experience life. I want to eat things. I want to watch things. I want to experience life. How is one supposed to experience life if they're stuck as this metal freak? It kind of devalues them as villains in my eyes, in a way, because they're villains because they want to rule. And in general, I never understand, and increasingly so, don't understand the usually in superhero movies, but like the general villain idea of I just want to rule the world. Like, why? What do you gain from that? What do you gain from that that you can't get by not ruling the world? And it's the same for things IRL as well. Why does this country want to conquer this country? What do you get out of it that you couldn't get otherwise through peaceful means? It's frustrating and just nonsensical to me. It's like my brain is broken in regards to it. I just can't comprehend it. Because it's like, these are fucking rich CEO types who just want to live forever. Well, live forever. Why would you become this thing? How is that in any way, shape, or form what you wanted? But that is probably the consequences of the rushed writing and the show essentially getting cancelled in season 3, so there's that. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool action and really cool moments and a lot of cool references in this episode. Black Knight is basically just female Rex at this point, and it's also revealed that she was also there at the time of the Nanite event, which is just really funny in a way. And basically, Rex knew her from back then, and I guess he also technically should have known Van Clyde, but whatever. He doesn't remember that shit, so that's fine. But yeah, is there anything else that I'm forgetting? Really cool action. So yeah, at the end, Rex ends up fucking curing everybody. And that's that. I wonder how he chose who to cure, though, because he didn't end up curing Bobo, for example, or himself. So he could still control nanites, and Bobo still could be like a humanoid, a monkey who can talk. Like, how did he have the ability to pick and choose? And also, how is it fair for him to keep his powers and to keep Bobo a talking monkey, but then take somebody like Squid or Tuck or Cricket or Cersei's powers? Like, what if I'm an Evo who can switch from human to evil whenever they want and enjoys their powers? Who the fuck is Rex to take that power away from me? That's one thing that bothers me about that ending there, where he cures everybody. Like, on paper, yeah, it's good, but it's like, you shouldn't force that shit on everybody, because some people might actually be lucky with their evil transformation and might actually have cool abilities. Because even, for example, at the end, where we get to see the human forms of Rex's friends from Hong Kong, they just look like boring, bland-ass teenagers who are just not interesting. I like them far more as their evil forms, not really as their human forms. And I feel like there's definitely gonna be people in the Generator X world who wouldn't like losing their powers like that. So I feel like it's, well, in a way, like a good decision for Rex to do. It's still kind of unfair to not create some kind of mechanism or whatever where people can keep the powers if they want to, you know? Because, like, who wouldn't want to be able to do these, like, crazy physical stuff if they can choose, when they can choose to, you know? It's like, I wouldn't mind being able to jump like Cricket if I could choose when to look like that and not. So maybe he could have given them instead the ability to switch between their evil forms and human forms, but what do I know? That's just how I feel about it. And there's probably other things that I'm forgetting about in regards to this episode, but I can't really cover everything. If you want me to cover everything good about this episode, you should go to my reaction and check it out. But yeah, I guess there's also the combination of the 5 bad guys, Black Knight and the rest of the consortium, into the one big Megazord thing, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But there was some good action there that I really enjoyed. But I feel like, again, it would have been more interesting of a battle if Rex turned into the orange monster first instead of the bluer one, because not only does the orange one have like more different weapons and it's not just a big metal guy, so it would have stood out more from the consortium giant robot, but again, it just has more different and interesting weapons, whereas the blue one is just a giant robot humanoid, you know? So that's a little bit annoying. But throughout this episode, 2 more things that one that I like and one that I hate is how kooky Van Kleist continues to act. Like, ever since coming back from the past, he was just a really funny character because he was just kind of insane and not there in the head, which turned out to be a ploy at the end, which was cleverly played. I really liked that. That was really, really fun, but it was really entertaining to see. But at the same time, I was just more and more mad with Caesar's constant hiding of the truth. That apparently the nanites, the meta nanites, were always meant to go into Rex and for him to have full control over them. So why didn't you just say that? Like, I get that the bad guys could potentially hear it and learn about the plans or whatever, but he was constantly being an asshole about it, and as if he didn't care. Like, even during the episode, I think the second episode, after the consortium turns into these metal gods, superpowered beings, they essentially turn the scientists who gave them these abilities now, like Caesar, Peter Meacham, Rylander, and Van Kleist, turn them into prisoners. And while Meacham is angry about it, Caesar just doesn't really give a shit, and he's just nonchalant about it. And it's just really frustrating how cold-hearted he seemed about all of this. Even if it was for a greater good, it was just very annoying, and I really wish they didn't do that with his character. Because it really made me hate him, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. And it was never explained to me, so... yeah. And also, another little tiny detail that I forgot to talk about is a little moment between Six and... the White Knight, right when Rex is being beaten to a pulp while in his robotic form, where he is potentially rebooting and potentially is going to lose his memory. Because in a previous episode, we learned that there's a protocol established where if Rex ever does that again, after the time he does it back when he's found by Six, that Six needs to take him out. This time, White Knight says that whatever agreement they've had in regards to that, it's no more. And I love that they have him say it like that and not flat out say, I know we've agreed on killing Rex if there is a danger of him rebooting again, but we're not gonna do that because he's become a hero that I trust. Like, since White Knight has gone through a lot of character development throughout the series, and he has changed to actually be closer to Rex and be understanding of Rex and his methods. He doesn't want to kill him or lose him in a way. So he says that to Six, but it's kind of a weird statement to make as well, because Six at that point shouldn't remember that agreement because he lost his memories. Literally, like, it was at that point like 20 episodes ago, but he shouldn't remember that because they made that agreement when Six first found Rex, and that is something that the current Six didn't remember. But still, it was a really nice moment there that I really, really liked. And also, one more thing that I almost forgot was a really cool moment where... It's this kind of thing that cartoons really love doing just because they know that the characters will never allow them to do and finish the job. That being that in this episode, at one point where our characters are almost going to be defeated, Six goes for a killing blow on a bunch of the soldiers. Like, he just goes for slicing them across the chest and beheading them with his swords, only to turn out that they are robots. And I feel like cartoons only go for these kind of shocking moments where the characters go for deathly blows just because they know that the characters won't allow them to do that. It's like, that's one of my major issue that I had with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the 2012 series, where especially later on, characters would go for like beheading blows or just go for stabbing other characters in the head, but they only do that because the characters are gonna catch it. If the characters weren't gonna catch it, the cartoon wouldn't get away with showing a character getting stabbed in the head. It's not as egregious in here and definitely doesn't give me of that kind of reaction, but it just reminded me of that. So yeah, that was a fun moment though. Another reason why I love this episode. I'm sorry, I feel like I went on a little bit of a rant there, but it is what it is. I think now we should continue with number 9. At number 9 being Season 1, Episode 21, Payback. An episode that I really, really wish was a two-parter. I mean, it's not like this series had a consistent length of episodes that it was. Because like Season 1 is 21 episodes, Season 2 is like 19 or something, and Season 3 is 20 episodes. So there's no reason why they couldn't have done 22 episodes to round it up and just give the concept of this episode a little bit more room to breathe. Because this is probably the episode that I remember the most outside of like something like the Ben 10 crossover from when I watched this show originally, because it was such a cool and interesting and impactful episode with like Rex losing his powers for this episode, which is typical shit that you would get in like an action cartoon or a shonen anime. It's something that happens all the time like that. So it's a recurring cool concept that I really enjoy. And then when he regains his powers, he gets new powers, which is really, really cool. Plus, in this episode, Van Cleef kind of gets an opposite power of what Rex has the ability to do. Instead of curing Evos, Van Cleef is able to infect them and create them, which is really, really interesting. But again, this is a cool concept, but it doesn't really feel like Rex really dwells on it too much, or he has to deal with it in a meaningful manner, because it's like he loses his powers and they instantly find out how he could possibly get them back, and he goes and gets them back. It's like, give it fucking time to breathe. I feel like they should have had more of the episode be about him recovering from that and gaining his powers. Like, that should have been something that he should have done in the second part of a two-parter, not in this one episode, you know? That's pretty much my only criticism about this episode, because other than that, it's a cool concept with Van Cleef invading and attacking Providence full-on, which is really cool to have your bad guys invade your good guys' base. It's really interesting. But yeah, I just feel like it really needed a room to breathe, and it didn't really have it. It could have been cool if it did, but it didn't. So there's that. But I do like his new weapons, and I do remember being really entertained by the new whip thing that he had. And I personally enjoy the color of his blue machines more, because blue is actually my favorite color. So I always kind of liked the blue machines more and found them more interesting, even back then. So it was cool that we finally got to the point where we start getting them, you know. But yeah, the most interesting thing about this episode is, like I said, the concept of Rex losing his powers and rediscovering them better than ever, with him having the ability to make new ones now, you know. Yeah, it just didn't really have the room to breathe. Some of the next episodes did have the room to breathe though, and I'm really excited to get into them, so let's continue with number 8. Season 1, Episode 18, Plague. And I just want to say, before we get into why I love this episode so much, if I had a nickel for every time we got a very topical episode about the 2020s, I would have 2 nickels, which is not a lot. But it's weird that there were 2 episodes which were surprisingly topical for the period of time during which I watched these 2 episodes. And this was one of those 2 episodes. Because, yes, remember what happened in 2020? That is debatably still a thing, but not so much as it used to be. That's right, the pandemic. And what is this episode about? A plague. And yeah, even outside of that, it is actually a fun episode that develops the character of White Knight and his relationship with Rex. That is the reason why I remember loving this episode when I watched it when it originally aired on TV. But the reason why I love it even more now is definitely the kind of real world experience that we've all went through in the last couple of years that has made this episode even more memorable, if you will. But yeah, I definitely enjoy the concept of this episode of like a sleeping plague and how quickly it spreads around the world and it affects everybody. That is really cool. And I love how Rex, being the one human who can control nanites, and White Knight being the one human without nanites, are the only people left in the world who can stop the plague and save everybody from dying, because if you are asleep for too long, you can't eat and you die. So I really love that about this episode, how they're basically forced to work together and save the world on their own. And I love their even fight that we have. And the first time we actually see the White Knight kind of outside of the office, and especially outside of even the giant robot thing where he's forced to be in just his suit. It's kind of odd that even at the end of the series, I don't think he... I'm pretty sure he's still separated by the end of the series. Like, he's... Even though the whole world is technically nanite-free except Rex, he's still kind of separated and he still refuses to have nanites in him or whatever. But like, I love his suit in this episode and the fights and arguments that the 2 of them have. And I love especially the statement that Rex makes that because the whole world has nanites, just like Rex, that makes Rex the normal one and White Knight the exception, the weird one, the abnormal one. Because he's the only human in the world without nanites. But I also like the point that White Knight makes about why he doesn't want any nanites, because he's the only person in the world who cannot be manipulated or controlled by the nanites, because he doesn't have any in him. So it kind of also makes sense why he should be the one leading the organization trying to deal with this shit. So yeah, that is pretty enjoyable. And there's also the evil itself that causes the sleeping plague, which is some really fucking freaky body horror that I really, really enjoy. Not so much when it becomes just another giant monster, but at first when we see the human who is the evil, it's some really freaky looking shit, and I really, really enjoy that quite a lot as well. And again, I really love the character development that White Knight gets, how he learns, he kind of goes through, I guess, similar character development through what Six went through in the previous years when he had to work with Rex closer. Whereas obviously White Knight was kind of more separated, and as we learn in, I believe, literally the next episode or so, he was willing to kill Rex. So this is a big development for his character from when he wanted to kill Rex back when he was a child, like when he was younger. So that is all pretty cool. Some pretty cool character development. But yeah, really fun episode. Really, really enjoyed it. And now on number 7, like I said, we're gonna have the second Nikyo at Season 1, Episode 10, The Forgotten. And if you haven't seen my reaction to this episode, you really, really should, because this is honestly, for me, one of the funniest, unexpected moments I've ever reacted to or seen. It's either the number one thing or number two. Because it's like out of nowhere in like 2022, in the summer of 2022, I'm watching Generator X and they fucking mention Kiev, of all places, as a place that has been destroyed, in the case of Generator X, by the nanites and by Evos. Whereas in the real world, we obviously had the war in Ukraine, which is horrible, and my heart breaks for every single Ukrainian that has died and continues dying because of that genocidal war. But that's not what you're here for. The point is, I really did not expect them to bring up Kiev in this show. Although, yeah, I do remember when I watched the show originally when that episode happened. But obviously back then, Kiev was nothing to me, you know? But here, I was just like really caught off guard. And that was my most genuine what ever that I've done in a reaction. Like, that was the most surprised I've ever been, because I didn't see that coming from anywhere. So that definitely makes the episode far more memorable. So that was kind of an interesting way to spice up the episode. But I also really like the villain of No Face, I think his name is. His design is pretty cool. He's red and muscular and badass, and he fights like a badass. I personally dub him Zelensky, which is really funny because Zelensky's name means green, yet this guy is red. So I guess you could call this guy Chervensky, because red, I assume in Ukrainian it would probably be Chervensky, because that's what the word for red is in my language, Cherven. In my language, my native language, is a Slavic one. But yeah, I really like that character as well quite a lot. He's a badass. His voice is pretty cool. His, I guess, kind of motivation, not so much motivation, but general like reason, motive, I guess, is better way to describe it. Not necessarily motivation, but motive for being the way he is and acting the way he is. He just wants people to leave him and his evils alone and not mess with them, or something along those lines. I don't remember. I just remember that he was very compelling and entertaining to watch, and I really enjoyed it. And I also love the concept of the bug jar itself, that being one place in the world where it's a no-go zone, basically, because it's so full with nanites and evos. And by the way, I just want to say, that's such a great idea to have the crossover, one of the biggest battle of the crossover with Ben 10, be in that location, because it's such a memorable and interesting and iconic location for Generator X. It's just such a good choice for that, you know? Although poor No Face and his evos. So yeah, there's some really cool action in this episode, thanks to No Face. And there's some really cool imagery that really reminds me of kind of like World War Z kind of thing, with like all the evils climbing the buildings and stuff. And it also reminds me of, I think it's like a Chinese movie or something that has people fighting bugs on the Great Chinese Wall or something along those lines. Kind of has some similar imagery to that as well. The only criticisms that I have for this episode is that Kiev does not look anything like Kiev, you know? Because, I mean, you can't really expect animators in the early 2010s to really fucking try to make the city look anything like what it looks like, because it looks like a generic American city. And the same thing happens in the Riddle of the Sphinx episode, which is supposed to happen in Egypt. I forgot what was the fucking capital of Egypt. How the fuck did I forget that? Cairo. It's supposed to be set in Cairo, and yet it doesn't look anything like Cairo. Just like how Kiev doesn't look anything like Kiev in this episode. but still pretty cool to have a setting like that there, because it also feels kind of close to home for me, because my country is not that far off from Ukraine. And for those of you curious what country I'm from Bulgaria. um, we are on the Black Sea, so we're not that far off from Ukraine, so it feels like it hits close to home for another country in my country's backyard, essentially, uh, being represented in a cartoon like this, even if in a very flawed way. It's still pretty cool. And yeah, it's also just really funny how there was 2 episodes that were surprisingly topical. Like, I did not see that coming with my reactions to Generator X. I did not see that coming. But it was pretty funny to see that in my reactions. So there's that. I think it was fun. Now though, we gotta continue with number 6. And I'm gonna tell you, I intentionally put this episode at number 6. That being Season 2, Episode 18, 6 minus 6. Yeah, in some ways it probably should have been like top 3 or top 4 episodes, because it focuses on 6. But it just felt wrong not to put it at number 6, with everything about Six's characters being about Six's, and even the show kind of making these kind of puns and jokes about Six. It just felt right for me to do that as well. And to be honest, there's also the argument that can be made about this episode not deserving to be any higher because of what it actually does to the character of Six, because it's a cool concept, having Six lose his memory in an attempt where they're trying to recover Rex's memories. It's this kind of really I don't know what to call it, but the universe punching back against you when you try to get something that you haven't earned, in a way. Because it's like Rex wants his memories really bad, but because he just wants them so badly, the universe decides to teach him a lesson and makes somebody he cares for lose their memories and basically become a completely different person because of that. So it's the cruelty of fate or something along those lines. I think there's like a term for that. But it's a cool idea. I like that. But the issue that I have for it is that it doesn't really feel like it amounts to anything. It's similarly to having Van Cleis be cured by Rex in one episode in season 1. It didn't really go anywhere. Next time he showed up, he was basically the same character. Like, he was back with his superpowers. And in the case of Six, next time we see him after this episode, he's basically the same Six with only the occasional reference to the fact that he lost his memories. And the thing is, I don't know if I truly want them to have committed to having him be a more different character or not, because I liked the character that Six was before losing his memories, especially with his character development throughout the series, where more and more he started to go against White Knight's wishes and started to kind of be a little bit more, I don't want to call it reckless, but just more of the record, just like Rex. Like, he definitely kind of started to be a little bit more like Rex, like doing things on his own without asking for permission by Six. Something that also Dr. Holiday, went on this kind of character arc as well, which was really cool to see. And I enjoyed that about his character. But then after he lost his memories, and after he kind of decides to try to be the man that he used to be before losing his memories, thanks to Rex, he's basically the same. There's really no difference between what he used to be and what he is now, And again, I don't know if I would have liked for them to really fundamentally change his character so they would justify this memory loss. That's why I feel like maybe at the end of the series they should have allowed him to recover his memories or not, because it feels fucking incomplete. It feels like they took his memories away, for no reason, and it didn't really amount to anything. Same thing with Rex's memories that I mentioned earlier. It feels like we didn't really get the satisfaction of Rex basically having a final goodbye or a final make his peace with the death of his parents. We didn't really get that, and it's the same with Six's character. We never really get the satisfaction of either him rediscovering and re-becoming the person that he used to be, nor do we get the satisfaction of getting a new version of Six that is in some way different but just as interesting, you know? So that's a little frustrating, but I do like the concept of it, and I guess it does go to show how much his character has developed over the course of the series. But I think the most frustrating thing about this episode and what it does to Six's character is that literally in the fucking previous episode, he finally admits his love for Holiday, and they basically become a couple. And then you do this shit? Why? It's like that's such a cool moment for the two of them, such an emotional one as well, such an impactful one, and then you take it away from them. Especially it's stupid because, again, similarly to his character in general, next season they basically just get back together little by little, you know? So why did you do it? It just feels pointless. But I guess this is a Man of Action staple, because some of that repetitious bullshit where the characters just changes but basically stay the same also happens in like Ben 10, more so I believe in like Ultimate Alien. But yeah, it's frustrating, but it is what it is. Now though, let's continue with number 5. That being an episode that I was actually really looking forward to getting to in terms of my reactions. That being Season 2 finale, Episode 19, Lions and Lambs. So I definitely remember this episode being very impactful and very emotional when I was a kid, when I watched it on Cartoon Network, because Breach was always like kind of an interesting character. One of the biggest reasons being because she reminded me a lot of Samara from The Ring, which traumatized me in my childhood. So that kind of thing made me more interested in her as a character because she was freaky like that. But in this episode, she's kind of humanized a little bit more, and she, similarly to Cersei, kind of ends up escaping from Van Cleis with Rex. And it's kind of enjoyable to see Rex kind of get close to her and trying to help her and everything. But at the same time, it's also frustrating how White Knight, in his typical stupid fucking actions, reckless actions, and impatient actions, ends up screwing it for everybody, because just as Rex was about to convince Breach to come with him and come to Providence as a way to escape from Van Cleis, who was just using her, White Knight shows up like a dumbass, shoots her, and basically makes it so essentially Rex lied to her and betrayed her. So everything that he worked for throughout this episode was for nothing. That moment really made me hate fucking White Knight. And I hate that the series never really fucking addresses, after this episode, how stupid of an action that was. Because that literally fucking might as well have killed her at the end of the episode because of what happens. Because I didn't know whether she was going to even show up later on again or not. Similarly to Van Cleis. So that might as well have killed her. And I would have really been mad at White Knight if she didn't come back later on. But yeah, again, we have some really cool action set pieces at the end of the episode where Van Cleis shows up. Some of my favorite action of this series happens there. We have a Van Cleis versus White Knight, which was really, really fun to see. And I love how there's a little moment where we acknowledge what happened in the previous episode with Six losing his memories, where he introduces himself to Van Cleis, and Van Cleis says, "We've met," and Six replies, "Don't remember." Like, that's a really nice moment. Like, those moments like that where they actually acknowledge that Six's character is, he's lost his memories, are actually funny and satisfying, and I enjoy them, but they're too far and few between, and it doesn't still really amount to much of a change of his character, so that's still stupid. There's also some really nice visuals throughout this episode, which I really, really liked seeing, especially that shot where they're... I don't even know where they are, but they are in like some kind of space where the stars are reflected in the water or whatever, and it just looks so cool. I really love that visual in particular. I love how Rex gives Breach the ability to control the weapon that Van Kleis made for her to use, and she uses it to send him to the past. And then that obviously ends up sending Rex to the future. But I really love the emotional scene of them hugging at the end there, where Rex didn't even know what was going to happen, and yet he managed to survive that, and she didn't. But it's a really emotional episode overall, with a pretty banger of an ending where it kind of sends up like a shaked up status quo for season 3. And I love that they don't leave you on Rex getting just sent to the future and you learning that. No, it just gives you a little bit more information, and you get to even see Black Knight in this episode and not have to wait until the season 3 premiere for that, you know? That's pretty cool as well. But yeah, all in all, it's honestly a great finale. I feel like it's at least a better execution of a finale compared to season 1. But again, I wouldn't have minded it to be a two-parter either, you know? I don't feel the necessity of it as much, but it still would have been fine. But yeah, I feel like in some ways this probably might be my favorite season finale, because season 1, like I said, could have been a two-parter. Probably should have been a two-parter. I mean, the season 3 finale feels very rushed, and it's also a finale for the series, but it doesn't really feel like we've actually dealt with our main villain. So this one actually feels like a more proper finale in a way, because this is the episode, the finale, in which we actually deal with Van Kleis. Whereas in the season 3 finale, he's back. Hell, Breach is even back working with him for some stupid fucking reason, which always kind of bothered me. But again, they kind of canceled the show, so I guess that's that. But I really wish they actually had a definitive ending for him and his posse. Because, like, this feels more like an ending. Like, this feels like a more of a satisfactory, tied up, satisfactory ending in which there's no really loose ends, no, at least not as much as in the actual series finale. But yeah, I don't know. It is a really fun episode that I really, really enjoy though, so there's that. So, at number 4, we're gonna have Season 1, Episode 19, Promises, Promises. The episode in which we learn a little bit more about Six's backstory from when he first started working for Providence, how Rex joined Providence, and how the White Knight became white, I guess. And it's honestly kind of interesting to see the way the whole operation worked back then, with White Knight not really being the leader of Providence. At least that's the impression that I'm under seeing him, because it's not quite spelled out whether he is or he isn't, and I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched that episode. But it seems like he was kind of filling the spot of what that blonde main Providence soldier we see throughout the series as a role was, where he is the main leader of the soldiers, but he's not obviously like the leader of Providence as a whole. And it seems that White Knight was like that as well until he got cleared out of all the nanites, which also made his hair white, which is kind of interesting that that's how that happened. I don't quite remember whether I watched this episode when it originally aired or not. I definitely remember seeing White Knight, how he became White Knight, but I don't remember seeing the rest of the episode, so maybe I've just caught the end at some point. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how back then, despite the fact that Six is the mercenary and White Knight is the soldier, even back then, before Six's character was mellowed out due to Rex, he still had more humanity and more better morals than White Knight, because White Knight was the one who said that not every evil needs to be caged, whereas like for Six, killing evils wasn't even on his mind. And it was White Knight who suggested that. And meanwhile, there was Holiday who was looking for a third option, aka a cure. So it's also interesting to see how Holiday was like an assistant, and then after this became the main doctor at Providence. It's pretty cool to see where all these characters started off from, you know. Plus, it's also kind of interesting to see the giant robot form that Rex turns into. We don't really get much of I guess, an idea or a backstory about what caused him to reboot at that point, because it's been kind of established that it is something that occasionally happens, like every couple of years or whatever, but we never really explained why he did it that particular time. Because we know that he did it after the Nanite event, but I believe the one that we see in that episode must be after the events back in Hong Kong with his friends over there. So something must have triggered that transformation, and it's not really clear what. At least I don't remember. But I personally far more enjoyed that giant robot version compared to the other one. It's far more interesting in its designs, the weapons that he uses as that, basically being all of the weapons that he has in his human form. And it's just more interesting compared to just a giant robot guy. You know, it's more of like a monster. It's more of like a Godzilla kind of creature, you know? It's like a Mecha Godzilla. It's pretty cool. I like that. And I love how throughout the episode, the kind of relationship between Six and Holiday kind of blossoms, for lack of a better term, because he is persuaded by her to be more humane and look for that third option, which turns out to be Rex, which is pretty cool. I was really mad. This was one of the episodes, probably the first episode of the series, where I was really mad at the characters in the series for being inhumane bastards, because the scientist to whom Holiday was like an assistant wanted to kill Rex. And I was just really mad about him, and I'm pretty sure I called him even a Nazi during the reaction, because how could you fucking kill a child just because it has some the possibility of becoming a giant monster? That's just fucking wrong. Like, sure, that mean they didn't have the opportunity of the ability to cure evils back then, with Rex being the one who cures them, but it still just fucking feels wrong to do that, you know? And this is also the episode which establishes the pact that Six and White Knight have, where if Rex ever reboots again, it's gonna be on Six to stop him, which for all intents and purposes means that he has to kill him. And again, I love how in the final episode of this series is actually kind of brought back with a White Knight saying to Six that he shouldn't kill him, but in a very subtle way. So it's not like an outright reference. It's a more of a subtle one, and I really enjoy that about it. But yeah, it's a really fun episode, delving into some of the really cool and important backstory of our characters and our plot. And it's a very fitting place for this episode in its season, because right after that we have well, I believe in here we have a shitty, after this episode we have a shitty filler episode, but then episode 21 is actually pretty cool, so there's that. It feels like it's a natural progression to the next main plot episode, you know? And I enjoyed quite a lot. It's a really cool episode. I just wish we got to see his giant mecha form, the orange one, at some point other than this episode, where he actually had full control of it and not just make a new one, but whatever, I guess. And I love how this episode also is in general about Rex's birthday, in a sense, because it's been like 6 years or whatever since he joined Providence, since he was brought into Providence, and how Holiday and Six are his family, and I love how Six also like gives him a really nice present. I believe it was a sword that had also a similar one, which Six himself kept. So that's a really nice connection between the two of them that they have now. I wish they kind of brought that at some point and had Rex use it in some way, shape, or form, because I'm pretty sure that's not ever brought out again, but it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, now we're gonna be getting into the top 3 episodes of this series. I'm sure if you have seen my reactions, you're not gonna be surprised the any of the 3 choices, honestly, but especially the number 2 and number 1 spot. You might be surprised a little bit about the number 3 spot, with that one being Season 2, Episode 15, A Family Holiday. I already mentioned when I was talking about the 6 minus 6 episode how it's really frustrating that literally a couple episodes before that we have Holiday and Six establish themselves into a relationship at the end of this episode. And it's really fucking frustrating because I love this episode. That's one of the best main reasons why I love this episode, because it finally establishes them as a couple, having small interactions between the two of them and build up and everything, and especially after seeing how their relationship started in this previous episode of season 1, episode 19, it just feels so earned to see them finally like come out with their feelings about each other, you know. And I really love the moment towards the end of the episode where Holiday is struggling because she's not able to do what she needs to do to cure her sister once and for all. And Six talks to her and even removes his glasses, which makes the moment even better. It just makes it's just such a good and memorable and emotional moment, and I really really like it. But even outside of that, it's obviously a really cool episode because it finally cures her sister, who funnily enough falls in love with Rex right off the bat, which is just really interesting. And the thing about that in particular is that it really fucking makes you realize how fucked up of a relationship the lust that Rex had for Holiday was. Because Holiday is like, what, 35 or something? Like, let's say she's mid-30s or something. She is like as old as Six, and yet Rex is like, what, 16, 17? It's just weird for him to be going for somebody that much older. It's like typical teenage behavior. At least it's a common, not necessarily typical, I guess. It's a common teenage behavior to lust for people who are older than you like that, but especially when you see him with Beverly, who is far more of his age and intellect and everything, it just feels weird for him to go after Holiday like that, you know? And I'm glad that he kind of gives it up after this episode, so that's pretty nice. The one fault that I would give for this episode is that it really feels kind of rushed in the first half, because it just kind of throws us into the plot of Holiday seeing this guy who supposedly can cure uncurable evils. Without any rhyme or reason, without any build-up, without any establishing, it just throws us into that. She instantly gives out her sister to this guy to cure her, and she gets fucked over and they have to save her. It just feels very rushed like that. I feel like this would have benefited from a 2-parter, or not quite as rushed 1-parter, but at this point that's par for the course for Generator X. A lot of these shows, episodes, feel like they don't really have enough room to breathe, and they weren't necessarily as polished or as thought out as they could have been, but it's still like a pretty decent show, you know. But that's pretty much the only thing that drags down the episode for me. It's a very emotional one, not necessarily many action-y moments that I really, really enjoy, but I love all the emotion towards the end where, like I said, Six has that talk with Holiday and reassures her, and then he almost dies himself when he tries to stop the machine that is supposed to cure her sister from exploding. He's trying to stop the machine, and the way the voice actor screams in that scene as well is really, really well acted. I really love that. But yeah, it's an amazingly emotional episode that I really, really loved. It was great. It was great. And what came after just kind of hurt it a little bit, but overall I'm still happy with it. It's mainly the 6-6 episode that kind of ruins this, but whatever. Let's just let it go at this point. But now we're gonna get into number 2. What honestly, debatably, might as well be the best episode of this series, because if you haven't realized at this point, you should know what's gonna be at number 1. Come on, how can I put anything else? So, for all intents and purposes, this might as well be the best episode of this series, because it's the episode that is the highest on this list that is completely self-contained to this series. That being Season 3, Episode 13, A Brief History of Time. And God, do I love this episode. This one honestly came out of nowhere for me. I wasn't sure whether we were gonna get Van Cleis ever again, because I didn't remember watching much of Season 3, if I gotta be honest. Maybe a little bit in the beginning, maybe a little bit at the end, but by and large, I don't remember watching much of Season 3, so I didn't know whether the Season 2 finale was the last we saw of Van Cleis or whether we were gonna get any more of him. But obviously, after the Riddle of the Sphinx episode, I knew that it was gonna happen. I was just wondering when. And this episode answered it. And in what way it fucking answered it as well. This was not only conceptually an interesting episode, it was a visually interesting episode. Execution-wise, it was an exceptional episode with the way they had him tell his story throughout the episode, basically, and see his journey through time and through the different eras and everything. I really wish we got a two-parter for this one. Like, I know I keep saying that, oh, this would have benefited from a two-parter or whatever, but like, I really love the concept of this episode, of this guy getting sent back in time, and through his own ingenuity, he uses all the technology that he has available at the time to create a machine that would keep him in stasis so he can come back to the present. Like, it's such a cool idea for anything, let alone just for an episode of this series. And it's really well executed. Like, I just love the visuals are amazing, man. It's the best visually the best episode of this show, bar none. Straight up, it's the best episode visually. But I just love the way he narrates his whole story and his whole experience. Some decently interesting action with him fighting in the Colosseum, I think it was, of Rome. That was pretty cool to see. And I just love how at the end you obviously learn, see his journey, and I love how at the end you see him come out of that capsule, which is just really cool, and see and learn that he has experienced the last like 2000 or however many years back he traveled. He has lived through all that time. He has felt it mentally and physically. So he comes out of that basically insane. And I really love that because it changes his characters in a really fun way, which actually kind of sticks for the rest of the series. Well, until the final episode, but that was also a pretty cool reveal that I was kind of suspicious throughout some moments that he was maybe faking it, but it was still really cool to see this kind of crazy cookie person Van Cleis had turned into. And obviously Bridge shows up as well, and I love how throughout the episode she's portrayed as a force of nature that is after him and trying to kill him. Kind of reminds me of how time travelers in the CW's The Flash are punished and chased by time wraiths who are supposed to protect the timeline, or at least used to be protecting the timeline. And they were supposed to kill anybody who was trying to meddle with the timeline. So that was really, really cool. In general, just added to the really cool atmosphere of him basically battling time itself to get back home. That was really cool. Some really cool stuff. That would be a really cool concept for a Doctor Who episode. And when you think about it, this is very similar of a concept to one of the best, debatably the best episode of Doctor Who ever, Heaven Sent. It's an amazing episode. If you guys haven't seen it, it's so damn good. But it's a very similar concept, and I really, really like it, man. This is, honestly, might be my personal favorite episode of this series, period. Because it's so good. And the number one spot is debatably whether it counts or not, but I just really fucking love this episode. Everything about it is amazing. The only thing that could be better is, like I said, the action was only decent, could have been better, but I did really, really enjoy it, regardless of that. I feel like the writing, the dialogue, the story, the plot was really, really good, to the point where I didn't mind the action not being necessarily as good. And it was still pretty decent. I just feel like there was some better action, but I feel like in general the season 3 action is not quite as good as in the previous season, so I'm not gonna complain too much about that. But yeah, now, before we get into the obvious number one spot for this series, I do want to get through a bunch of honorable mentions. With those being, Season 1, Episode 8, Breach. Season 1, Episode 11, Operation Wingman. Season 2, Episode 14, Hard Target. Season 1, Episode 14, Gravity. Season 1, Episode 16, The Swarm. Season 1, Episode 20, Badlands. Season 3, Episode 15, Hermanos. Season 2, Episode 1, Rampage. Season 3, Episode 7, Double Vision. Season 3, Episode 9, Black and White. Season 3, Episode 10, Dead Zone. And Season 3, Episode 16, Target Consortium. All of these episodes are also just as good as many of the episodes that I've mentioned on this list, because like I said in the beginning of this video, a lot of the good episodes of this show are not that far from each other in terms of their quality. There's not as much of a variety in quality as there is in other series that I've covered on the channel. So any of these could easily have ended up on this list, but I didn't really feel like I had as much to say about many of these episodes as I did for the episodes that I actually put on this list. So that's the second best thing that I could have done for many of them. But many of them, like Breach, which is a really cool horror-y episode, or Hermanos, which is a really fun episode featuring Annie and Claire once again, to where basically Annie kind of fucking gets full control of her bad luck power and uses it to her advantage. That's some really cool stuff. Like, there's a lot of really cool episodes in this bunch that I just didn't really have much to say about, so we're gonna stick them here, you know. But yeah, now we are finally gonna be getting into the number one spot on this list. That being Season 3, Episode 3 and 4, or what is actually Episode 10 and 11 or something along those lines, because it's supposedly mixed up a little bit. That being the Heroes United crossover with Ben 10. Now, I'm not quite sure whether this really counts as a proper episode of this series, because it's largely a self-contained story that does connect to Generator Rex, but doesn't really build up anything after this. Like, it doesn't really amount to much as a whole. It doesn't really add to the Generator X plot much. But considering that for pretty much every other series that I've... I did something similar with my top list for Fullmetal Alchemist, where the special thing, in that case being a movie, ended up being the number one on this list, and in this case that is the crossover that ended up being the number one on this list, because it's just the most memorable and the most interesting and most exciting point in those series. For Fullmetal Alchemist, that obviously was the movie, which I really, really liked, and it was genuinely the best piece of Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 content that we ever got. In this case, this is the best piece of Generator Rex content. It was the most excited I've ever been. I guess, obviously, outside of the brief History of Time episode. But again, I feel like this was still just a more satisfying on an action level, on a character level, on basically every level. Plus, it included Ben from Ben 10, and I'm a big Ben 10 fan. Hell, Ben 10 is the whole reason why I wear watches, so I don't know, it just felt wrong to put it on this list but not put it as number one, you know? And it was really fun. Everything about this crossover was amazing, from the action to the character to the jokes to the writing. Like, it's such a well-written and well-executed crossover. I love it. The only fault that I can give it is that it doesn't really connect to Ben 10 in the Ben 10 universe in any way, shape, or form, because at least in this crossover with the backstory about Alpha, it does connect to the larger narrative, but this is literally never mentioned in Ben 10, and I can't really fault this crossover for it. I can fault the Ben 10 series for it, but not really the crossover. But it was really, really exciting piece of Generator X content, and you should check out my reaction, honestly, if you haven't, but if you're watching this video, you probably have. So anyway, I don't really have much to say in addition to what I've already said about it, but it was great. It was really fun, and it honestly kind of made me realize how much more mature Rex is than Ben, despite the fact that they're basically supposed to be like the same age or whatever. Because like Ben's behavior during this crossover made Rex appear as the mature one, and I've had a lot of frustrations throughout my reactions to Generator X about how immature he is and how he doesn't take things seriously, even in situations where he should, which is really, really annoying. I like characters who are immature or have a childish glee in their eyes, but who are able to take things seriously when times call for it. And it's really frustrating whenever a character who has that childish, immature glee doesn't take things seriously when he should. But I feel like in this crossover, Rex took things more seriously than Ben did, which is really, really annoying. But it was also funny, so there's that as well. And it just, and having watched the original Ben 10 series more now, I've just finished the first season of it. It makes me realize how much more I actually enjoy the teenage Ben than the young Ben, so there's that as well. But yeah, this is a really well written crossover. The only thing that can make it better is if we actually had Six involved in it more, instead of him being taken out of the story early on to leave some more space for Ben, I guess. But that's kind of one of the only minor flaws. Like, for me, this is a 9.8 kind of thing. Like, yeah, there's maybe some minor tweaks that I could have changed to make it better, but it's as good as it probably could have been. And yeah, there's not really much else to say other than that. I really enjoy it. I love that it actually builds off of the world of Generator X. And it's the most excited I've ever been when it comes to Generator X. Again, outside of the previous episode, but this was just like the best way I can put it is, I guess, for Brief History of Time, that's the peak of my excitement. But for Heroes United, my general level of excitement for everything was like elevated. Whereas for Brief History of Time, it was like more of a high peak with more unevenness. Whereas for this, it was consistently like a 9, 10 out of 10 from beginning to end. If that makes any sense to you guys. But yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't really quite explain nicely or as good as I usually do why I love the episodes that I love and why I picked the episodes that I have picked. But there's not really quite as much to say about many of these episodes as I have to say for other series, because that's just how Generator Rex is for me. It's a show that is enjoyable, that is interesting, has some cool concepts, has some cool characters, but it doesn't quite feel like it has as much depth as it should. and that kind of leads to me not really having quite as much to say about many of these episodes, despite the fact that I literally quickly rewatched them before doing this video, so I can remind myself about what actually happened in this episode, you know? So yeah, I'm sorry if this video is not quite to the same quality as other Nostalgia Peak episodes are, but it is what it is, and I hope you still enjoyed it regardless. And I'm also very curious, what are your guys' picks for the best episodes of Generator X? Make sure to comment them down below, and let's have a discussion about which are the best episodes, because I love talking about these kind of things with you guys, seeing where our opinions diverge and why they diverge. It's always really, really fun. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So before we end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 5 patrons on Patreon: Omar Bridgman, Deadpool, Corvidet, Andrew, and Dane Harty. Thank you guys for your support. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. You have decided to support me, have continued to support me in such a long time. Hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description to my Wattpad, where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you don't enjoy my stories or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Ko-fi account, where you can pledge your support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do any of that, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think it's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!